Hello everyone, my name is Shrikant Patatil. I'm from Harbinger Systems. Today we are going to talk about how people analytics is important when you're designing software for HRTech and how it's going to help you create a sustainable remote workforce in future. There are 4 topics that we want to cover today. First, we want to understand what market shifts exist and what is driving this change and adoption towards people analytics and the future of work. The second topic is about what challenges are chief data science officers dealing with when it comes to building systems that require or use data. The third important point we are going to cover is a topic about WorkTech, how HRTech scope has increased to cover collaboration tools and productivity tools as well. And the fourth point is about using emerging technology to design some of these systems and how we could leverage some of these upcoming things in future to design systems better, to build systems faster, and so forth. So on that note, let's move on to our first section. Let's talk about market shifts in people analytics and future work. What is driving this demand for people analytics? It has increased during the times of the pandemic. Now, what constitutes a data-driven organization is when they create a culture and strategy around data. Now, organizations that measure more than 5 parameters can call them a data-driven organizations. And what study has shown is that organizations before the pandemic were not even measuring up to 5 parameters. Now, during the pandemic, organizations which were collecting data and data that was connected to people and people analytics were able to transform their workforce or change when the pandemic hit them. So that was a very important thing that happened during the pandemic time, which organizations which didn't collect data were able to do. Now, when it comes to these organizations, their outlook towards data is to focus on outcomes as opposed to record keeping. Now, what it means for frontline managers is that the data analytics helps them do better HR decision making. They help them to monitor operations like productivity, employee safety, employee well-being, and recruitment, and so forth. However, it's the holistic picture that matters. Organizations that enable frontline managers with data are able to take decisions faster and sooner than organizations that have to scramble when it comes to accessing this information, or if these informations are in siloed applications, so they are collectively not able to interpret it. So therefore, when it comes to people analytics, it's important that you enable your frontline managers with data, and data that is holistic. That means they can touch upon multiple parameters to make the decisions. Let's look at an data organization and what kind of aspirations that they would have when it comes to measuring data. So what we at Harbinger have come across and used at some places is something called as a workplace analytics maturity model. Now, it starts with very basics, just with operational reporting, then moving on to advanced reporting, then advanced analytics, and even then predictive analytics. So you have to transform from doing basic measurements of efficiency parameters when it comes to whether you're using ATS or whether you're using an employee engagement platform, to going up all the way and predicting based on the data as to how some of your HR and people information will be used and how you can use them to make sure that changes the outcomes of your business as well as your strategy. Now, one example that we have come across, we've worked extensively in the recruitment space, and when it comes to applicant tracking, we have come across applicant tracking system tracking close to 12, 18, 20 different parameters and measuring them and providing insights to recruiters and HRs to take their decisions. And what we realized that about 12 of these metrics are available in the ATS systems themselves. However, when it comes to enforcing or taking decisions on outcomes, like whether your recruitment is efficient, whether it's impacting how you are hiring somebody and whether they are performing and so forth, then you have to look for data across the ATS, like not just the ATS, but you have to look at data from job boards, you have to look at data from HRIS platforms and payroll, and that requires a holistic view and consistency when it comes to collecting all this information and reporting on top of that. So moving on to our next section, where we will talk about challenges when it comes to collecting all this information. So we were talking about how a data-driven organization needs to collect information. Now, people who are designing the systems, whether you are designing a platform or you're designing an internal application which collects a lot of data and reports on it, there are various challenges that these chief data science officers or VP of engineering at firms face. So we think that there are three important things that they need to think about when it comes to their hot buttons. One is around data wrangling, the second one is about mature AI ops, and then having a skill team. Now, why are these three things important? Because when a CHRO is expecting things from data, they are not only thinking about measuring one or two parameters, or they are not only interested in what's happening in their own organization, but what are the information that they can collect together and from various systems and put it into a data lake or a data warehouse, so that they can make meaningful predictions when it comes to things like workforce availability, skills development, things like how to enable remote work and make it more productive. And of course, when it comes to challenges of designing the systems, you have things like how to use AI and make it even fast and real time when it comes to using data which is in textual form, on videos, images. So for example, if you're dealing with a lot of recruitment information, the information can be in any form. I mean, you could be analyzing videos and interpreting that and making information. So therefore, in terms of data wrangling, what these systems need to do is be able to do and collect data in a scalable form, and the systems need to be enabled in such a way that you can get information from multiple sources. The second important point, like we talked about, is about having an AI ops process. Now, everybody who designs AI systems thinks about it more like a lab initiative. They build these AI platforms and they use it in the lab, it works. However, when it comes to moving it to production, they're faced with many challenges because they have not thought about how this plays into the ecosystem of the applications that they're developing, how their end users are going to use this AI. Is it going to be performant enough for them to really use it? And to do all this, the constant challenge that a data officer has is how to keep the team together. Do they have the diverse skills, not only from an AI and machine learning perspective, however, when it comes to designing apps that interface well with their end users, how to use cloud technology to enable this across in a seamless, scalable fashion, and of course designing mobile apps that comes into play. So overall, we see that there are multiple areas that a data officer or a VP of engineering is juggling with, and they need support from skilled teams or organizations that have all these three aspects that they can help them on. So we at Harbinger have solved some of these specific problems, and we would like to highlight that experience just to give you an idea of what it means. So when it comes to data wrangling, we worked with a large recruitment company who was primarily focused on moving employees between locations. So it was like into relocation, and they were collecting data in various systems. That they had 4 or 5 systems in which they collected information, and those systems interfaced with the end customers. However, when they were making insights, the challenge was that they had to report across various systems and then produce and then deliver that to the end customer. So none of this was happening in real time. So they required to create an ETL approach that is scalable, which in their own systems collected all that information, put it into a data store or a data lake, and provided analytics on top of that. So it required a sophisticated ETL and data wrangling approach to enable the functionality that their customers were looking at. The second problem that we have solved is taking a lab-based AI that worked in the lab. Like for example, we were building, this was a large benefits provider in the insurance market, and one of the challenges they were trying to solve is how to make the insurance process of claiming insurance when it comes to vehicles and damage fast. So they decided that they need to create a mobile app using which they will collect this information and in real time be able to report whether the insurance will be processed or not processed. Now, on the AI side, they were able to develop this in the lab, like compare images of a real car and a damaged car and say that to what scale of the damage is there. However, when we tried to put this in production, the number of car models, the number of images, the way the people clicked photos, all became a challenge. So it was not just the AI that was important here. It was also the logistics that you and the help that you provide the end users that define the success of your AI app that you build. And that's what Harbinger was able to do, help them specifically there. And this doesn't happen with one app. I'm sure any AI model that you develop internally and research and it's successful in the lab, you take it to production, these are the challenges that you will encounter. Last but not the least is having a skilled team that comprises, whenever you talk about an AI team, the only thing that gets discussed is that we need data scientists, data engineers, and machine learning experts. We forget about the designers, the cloud engineers, the mobile experts, who also need to understand these data applications and be able to partner and build an end-to-end solution. So when we worked with a healthcare company which was designing, basically providing insights using their systems as to whether a claim would be processed or how quickly there were any anomalies in the claims that they were submitting. We had to create this team which also understood the existing app, but also had data scientists and data engineers who could make information, collect information and knowledge out of all these data that they were trying to collect and build an application that really helped and solved the end user's problem. So moving on to our next section, where we are going to talk about the expanding scope of HRTech and how WorkTech has started playing an important role. So the emerging concept now is that as you're building software or AI or people analytics for HRTech, you only cannot restrict yourself to the HR apps. You also need to think about where information is coming from, where are people actually interacting with. Sometimes they are on the productivity tools, they're using the productivity software, and that helps HR measure how an employee is performing. Secondly, you see that tools like Zoom, you see tools like Microsoft Teams being used extensively, and specifically post-pandemic. Those are being systems where everybody is collaborating on. So when it comes to people analytics, it's not just information that HR needs to collect from HR apps, it needs to go and extend itself to collaboration apps as well as productivity tools, because that's where people are spending most of their times, and that information, when collected and analyzed together with HR apps information, helps you provide better insights. So for example, it helps HR take faster actions, build systems that nudge employees just in the time of work or in the flow of work. They allow for a distributed workforce management. They also help in correlating productivity and engagement, and also things like whether the training that you're providing is effective when it comes to people when they're doing their jobs. And you've seen various partnerships in the industry. For example, Microsoft and Workday partnership for Teams and Azure integration, Salesforce buying Slack or Salesforce and Workday integrating for better productivity and back to work solutions. So in a nutshell, when you're designing people analytics solutions, you just, even if you're in the scope of HR tech, you need to expand that. And that's what the new term is there, like thinking about work as a paradigm and extending HR and calling it like work tech, which spans across data sources. So when you're designing these systems, what is most important? You need to make sure that your integration is working well. And we saw that initially also when it came to just the ATS example, that if you want to make your recruitment better and affect business outcomes, you need to look beyond the applicant tracking system. Similarly, when it comes to people analytics, you need to collect data from recruitment systems, HRIS systems, collaborative systems, productivity systems, integrate all of that and put it into a data warehouse or a data lake, depending on what your need is and the type of data you have, which will help you go up in the maturity model and right from efficiency, go up to effectiveness, and even drive outcomes once you've collected enough information, historical information, you have built enough models, you will be able to provide those insights to your end customers. Finally, we'll come to a section where we talk about technology and what new things are coming in the market which can help us do better at data analytics and also speed things up. So of all the important trends that are coming up, we have shortlisted 3 trends that are impacting future of work. One is hyperautomation, second is Internet of Behaviors, and total experience. So if you're designing apps that measure people analytics, then these 3 trends would be probably things that you would run into. Hyperautomation is probably a combination of how AI, ML, and RPA is coming together for help you design apps that provide you information in real time. So for example, if an HR manager is looking for information of how the employees are engaged in tools like Teams, Zoom, and measure the pulse of an organization, you can use hyperautomation. The second important trend is Internet of Behaviors. Now, we have seen that people using this or wanting to use this to make back to work solutions. So how people are interacting with various devices, how they're using it, and combining that information and that behavior to make workplace safe. And finally, the total experience. So when it comes to people analytics, it is not just designing software that works for HR or employees, but you have to think about your extended workforce, be it your contractors, be it your vendors, and various applications that people use to create or enable work in your organization. So total experience means when people have to think about the holistic picture of how work is being done and work is being conducted, and designing experience for all the users in the system. So on that note, we come to the end of today's presentations. We have talked about 4 important points of how people analytics and measurement of data is important for creating a data-centric organization. The second important point we talked about is how CDSOs are faced with various challenges when it comes to building scalable ETL, taking applications from lab to production, and creating a skilled team that has a combination of not only data engineers but cloud engineers, mobile designers, and so forth. The other topic that we discussed was about how the scope of data collection is not just restricted to HR apps. You have to extend into collaboration tools, productivity platforms to get all that information together to create better analytics. And finally, there are some emerging technologies like hyperautomation, total experience, and Internet of Behaviors that will facilitate real-time data analytics, seamless workflows, and rich user experience in the apps that you build. So I'm sure this was a short insight into how to go about designing people analytics applications and how you can create and use that to build a sustainable workforce. So thank you for your attention and have a great day.